She noticed the package was wrong before anyone else did. Not wrong like damaged or misdelivered, wrong like dangerous. The return address didn't exist. The postage was irregular. The weight distribution felt off when Sandra Miller picked it up at the sorting facility in Oklahoma City at 6:23 a.m. on a Thursday morning. 22 years delivering mail had given her instincts about packages, but these weren't mail carrier instincts. These were explosives detection instincts. Because before Sandra had spent 2 decades walking residential routes in quiet neighborhoods, she'd spent 8 years in the Air Force as an explosive ordnance disposal specialist, defusing bombs in Iraq and training teams to recognize improvised explosive devices. The package in her hands had every signature of an IED designed to kill whoever opened it. And it was addressed to Federal Judge Raymond Martinez, the same judge who just sentenced 3 domestic terrorists to life imprisonment. Sandra had maybe 30 seconds to decide: follow protocol and pass it up the chain, or trust her training and stop a potential assassination right now. Welcome to Life Stories Archive, where the people delivering our mail sometimes save lives we'll never know were in danger. Sandra Miller had been a mail carrier for the United States Postal Service since 2001. Route 47 in northwest Oklahoma City was her territory, a mix of suburban homes, small businesses, and the occasional office building. She knew every address, every dog, every resident who needed packages left in specific places. At 53, she moved with the efficient pace of someone who'd walked thousands of miles over 2 decades. Her uniform was always pressed, her delivery times consistent, her customer service ratings excellent. The kind of employee the Postal Service loved: reliable, professional, invisible in the way good public servants are. People on her route knew her as friendly, but not chatty. "Morning, Mrs. Miller," they'd say, and she'd nod, smile, hand over their mail, and continue her rounds. Some knew she was a veteran. The occasional flag pin on her collar, her posture, the way she organized her truck with military precision. But nobody knew the specifics. Nobody asked what an Air Force veteran had done before delivering mail. And Sandra never volunteered the information that she'd been one of the few women qualified as an EOD specialist, that she'd diffused over 40 improvised explosive devices in combat zones, that she'd trained hundreds of soldiers to recognize threats most people never thought about. Every morning at 5:45 a.m., Sandra arrived at the distribution center to sort her route's mail. Standard procedure: organize by address, load the truck in delivery sequence, check for special instructions, or certified mail. October 26th started like any other morning. Coffee from the break room, exchange nods with other carriers, begin sorting. The mail volume was average: bills, catalogs, a few packages, nothing unusual. Then she picked up package number 2847, JKL, addressed to Judge Raymond Martinez at his office address. Standard priority mail envelope, about 9 by 12 inches, marked as documents. Sandra's hands registered the weight distribution before her brain processed why it mattered. The package was heavier on one end, not dramatically, just enough to create an imbalance that shouldn't exist in a flat envelope containing papers. She set it down carefully and examined it without touching it further. The return address listed a law office in Tulsa, but the postage showed it had been processed through a small post office in rural Arkansas. The handwriting was carefully printed, too carefully, like someone trying to disguise their normal script. Old training kicked in. In Iraq, IEDs came in every form imaginable: packages, letters, objects that looked completely ordinary until they exploded. The key was recognizing patterns, inconsistencies, things that were almost right, but not quite. Sandra didn't panic. Panic gets people killed. She stepped away from the sorting station and approached her supervisor, Tom Brennan, who was reviewing delivery schedules. "Tom, I need you to look at something. Don't touch it. Just look." Something in her tone made him follow without questions. Sandra pointed to the package from a safe distance. "What am I looking at?" Tom asked. "Potential mail bomb, addressed to Judge Martinez." Tom's expression shifted from confusion to alarm. "Sandra, are you serious? How can you tell?" She explained: the weight distribution, the return address inconsistency, the postage route that didn't match the sender, the careful printing designed to avoid handwriting analysis. Individually, these might mean nothing. Together, they formed a pattern. "We need to evacuate the building and call the bomb squad," Sandra said calmly. "And we need to do it now without causing panic." Tom stared at her. "How do you know about bombs?" "Air Force EOD, 1993 to 2001. Explosive Ordnance Disposal. I've seen enough improvised devices to recognize the signatures. Within 8 minutes, the distribution center was evacuated under the guise of a gas leak, enough to get everyone out without causing the kind of panic that leads to injuries. The Oklahoma City Police Department's bomb squad was en route, ETA 15 minutes. Sandra stayed near the building but outside the blast radius, available to brief the bomb technicians. She'd given Tom specific details about the package's location and why she suspected it was dangerous. The bomb squad commander, Lieutenant Marcus Webb, arrived with his team and immediately sought out Sandra. "Ma'am, I understand you identified a potential device?" Sandra walked him through her assessment: the physical indicators, the contextual red flags, the target profile. Judge Martinez had just finished a high-profile domestic terrorism trial. The timing fit, the methodology fit. Webb listened with the focused attention of a professional recognizing another professional. "Ma'am, what's your background?" "Air Force EOD. 8 years active duty, mostly Iraq. Worked vehicle-borne IEDs, mail bombs, improvised devices. Retired as a staff sergeant in 2001. Webb nodded slowly. "Your assessment sounds solid. We'll treat this as a confirmed threat until we can X-ray and clear it." The bomb squad's portable X-ray unit revealed what Sandra had suspected. The document envelope contained a sophisticated pipe bomb designed to detonate when opened. The device included a pressure release trigger. The moment someone lifted the flap, it would explode with enough force to kill anyone within 10 feet and injure anyone within 30. It was designed to target Judge Martinez specifically. The domestic terrorist cell he'd sentenced had connections and resources. They'd planned this carefully, timed it to arrive on a day when the judge typically opened his own mail before his staff arrived. If Sandra hadn't recognized the threat, Judge Martinez would have opened that package at approximately 8:15 a.m. in his chambers. The resulting explosion would have killed him instantly and likely injured his judicial assistant, who sat just outside his office. Lieutenant Webb approached Sandra as his team carefully neutralized the device. "Ma'am, you saved at least one life today, possibly more. That was expert threat assessment." Sandra watched the bomb squad work with the calm expression of someone who'd done this before. "Just glad I was paying attention." Most mail carriers wouldn't have noticed those indicators. Most mail carriers weren't trained to recognize IEDs in combat zones. Sandra checked her watch. Lieutenant, assuming my route's mail is cleared, I need to finish my deliveries. People are waiting for their mail. The FBI's domestic terrorism unit took over the investigation. The device was traced to members of the same extremist network Judge Martinez had sentenced. 3 arrests followed within 48 hours. The story made national news, not as a bombing, but as a prevented attack. The headlines focused on the postal worker who'd recognized what trained security personnel might have missed. The Postal Service wanted to honor Sandra publicly. The FBI wanted to use her as an example in training programs. Local politicians wanted photo opportunities. Sandra declined most of it. She accepted a private commendation from the Postmaster General and agreed to speak at one FBI training session about threat recognition in civilian settings. But she refused interviews, didn't want her photo in newspapers, and requested that coverage minimize her role. "I did my job," she told the Postmaster General. "Same as I do every day. The only difference is that today my job included something I learned 20 years ago." Judge Martinez personally called to thank her. "Ms. Miller, you saved my life. If there's anything I can ever do, just stay safe, Your Honor, and maybe check your mail a little more carefully from now on." 2 weeks after the incident, Sandra Miller was back on Route 47, delivering mail to the same houses, the same businesses, the same familiar faces. Most of her customers had heard about what happened. The story had been local news for days. Some thanked her. Some asked questions she politely deflected. Most just took their mail with a new appreciation for the woman who'd been delivering it for 22 years. "Mrs. Miller," one elderly customer asked, "were you scared when you found that bomb?" Sandra thought about it honestly. "No, ma'am." I was focused. Fear comes when you don't know what to do. Training takes the fear away. The Postal Service implemented new security protocols based on Sandra's recommendations. Mail carriers across the country received briefings on threat recognition. The training didn't make everyone an explosives expert, but it raised awareness about patterns that might indicate danger. Sandra Miller continues walking Route 47, delivering mail with the same reliable efficiency she's shown for 22 years. The EOD training that saved Judge Martinez's life is still there, always ready, but mostly it just makes her better at her everyday job, noticing details, recognizing patterns, staying alert. She doesn't see herself as a hero. Heroes, in her view, are the EOD technicians still deployed in combat zones, the ones facing threats every day instead of once every 20 years. She's just someone who learned skills in one context and happened to need them in another. But to Judge Martinez, to the FBI agents investigating domestic terrorism, to the postal workers who received better training because of her actions, Sandra Miller is exactly what America needs. Professionals who carry expertise quietly, serve faithfully, and act decisively when threats emerge. Some mail carriers just deliver packages. Sandra Miller delivers packages and occasionally saves lives using training that never expires and instincts that never retire. Have you ever realized someone in a routine job had training that prevented a disaster nobody else saw coming? Share their story in the comments. Because expertise doesn't advertise itself. It just quietly protects us until the moment it's desperately needed. If this story reminded you that professionals are everywhere, subscribe to Life Stories Archive. Every quiet expert deserves recognition for staying vigilant in jobs that rarely require their full capabilities.